Motherhood is hard work. And for some reason, we're not allowed to talk about it. Society tells us to focus on the magic of our little ones and to never complain about how tough it can be. Now, this is just another example of how society encourages us to always be positive, to look on the bright side, to be grateful, to focus on the good things, while ultimately ignoring and shoving away the real difficulties that also deserve to be honored, deserve to be validated and heard. It's no wonder mothers are reaching for sugar and other coping mechanisms to get through the day and deal with the emotions that ultimately aren't allowed to come to the surface. So, in today's episode, I'm opening up about my own challenges in motherhood so far and how I'm actually using these opportunities for growth and healing in my own journey along the way. Now, I'm going to share my own experiences here below, and I encourage you to follow along and perhaps connect with your own experiences in motherhood, whether you're a mother, a grandmother, a sister, an auntie. My hope is that this episode can shine some light on the way that we can approach challenges in our lives and the growth that we can get out of them. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome to the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Dame, holistic nutrition coach and speaker. Let's dive in. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. I have a rare moment here where Landon is hanging out with dad and taking a nap. So I am sneaking in a podcast recording, which has definitely served to be more challenging than I expected, finding space in my day when I am somewhat rested and Landon is content and doesn't need me to sit down and record these. So this is really special. And this has been an episode that I've wanted to record for a while, as I'm about 6 months into my postpartum journey, my motherhood journey. And it has been a wild growth journey so far. And gosh, I know it's going to continue for the rest of his life, the rest of my life. I know stepping into motherhood is such a opportunity for challenges and new areas for me as a human to grow. It's pushed me beyond what I was capable of many times, from just the birth itself to caring and showing up for a little one and being present after sleepless nights. I mean, it's been hard. It's, of course, also been magical and magnificent. And I want to really preface this episode because I'm going to talk about some of the challenges and some of the stuff that has been hard. That, of course, there's also been a lot of good. And I'm not putting that to the side. I just feel like in society right now, that is what's mostly talked about. It's all the good, right? You see on Instagram, everybody's having a blast with their kids and they're out having the best life, hashtag best life. And I wanted to just really bring some real talk into this because motherhood is freaking difficult. And for anyone who, has children in their life, whether or not you're a mother, you can see how challenging it is to show up for these little ones and to navigate the ups and downs and just everything that it calls of you to, to be around and help raise these little ones. So I really wanted to, open the vault on some of the things that I've gone through. And these might not be the same challenges that you've experienced or that mothers in your life have experienced, but I'm willing to bet a lot of these can be pretty relatable, whether or not you have kids. So I wanted to dive into this and really just be open and honest with how difficult this journey has been for me. It's, as I mentioned, also been super magical. And Landon is great. And we're very lucky. He's a pretty simple, easy baby so far. And we've been navigating a lot of these challenges in the best way we can. And I want you to actually, as I go through this list of challenges, a lot of the lessons that I'm pulling out and sharing with all of you today are not new lessons for me. They're next levels of lessons for me. And they can really apply to anything that's going on in your life. Now, I know many of you listening to this podcast struggle with food, right? Struggle with the coping mechanism of sugar or just those addictive patterns. And a lot of this, in my opinion, really comes from not talking about when we're having a hard time, not honoring the emotions that come up when life is hard, and resisting change and challenges when they show up. So, what I'm hoping to do in this episode is show you that even though have been through and continuing to go through really hard, difficult times with adjusting to being a mom, I'm choosing to see those as lessons. I'm choosing to bring in self compassion. I'm choosing to see this new adventure that I'm on as a gift and an opportunity. And you can take this mindset into anything that you're going through in your life right now, whether it's a change in a job, a change in a relationship. For me, it's a massive change in identity, right? And this shows up for us as women in all areas of our life and at different stages of our lives too. So, as I've mentioned a few times already, right? I'm really noticing like the biggest lessons for me over the last 6 months have come out of the biggest challenges. And again, this is, I think, true for any of us at any phase of life, right? When we go through the biggest challenges, whether it's a job loss, a relationship loss, a health scare, right? These often pose the opportunities for us to lean into the biggest growth and the biggest lessons for us. So today I'm talking about motherhood, of course, and the specific challenges there. 6 months into this journey, and I want to share with you 5 of the biggest areas of struggle for us and, well, me, I guess, specifically. And yeah, how these have really helped me grow and how I'm continuing to possibly even go through these. I mean, these challenges that I'm going to share are not fully over and are still, very real areas of challenge for me. So let's dive in without further ado. So these are the 5 areas that I really, have noticed the biggest growth, the biggest challenges. And number one, off the bat, as any mother can relate, is sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. So this is a fun one. I was really going into motherhood hoping and praying, okay, like we're going to figure it out. We're going to sleep great. My baby's going to be awesome at sleeping, trying to manifest all the good things. And it has been a crazy roller coaster. And as I said, we're 6 months in, we're still trying to figure it out. It's been a trip. So, sleep, of course, is something I know is so important for my mental health, for my blood sugar regulation, for my happiness, for my total body health. I mean, we all know by now, hopefully, how important sleep is. Now, when there's a little child involved, that gets thrown out the window. And especially because I'm breastfeeding, right? I'm needed in a way that I've never been needed before. And I went into motherhood really passionately believing in the importance of co-sleeping. So I want to talk about this because this has been such a challenge for me and honestly continues to be. This continues to weigh on my heart because we're not at a place where I thought we would be with co-sleeping. So in the beginning, when Landon was really young in those first couple weeks, we tried all sorts of sleeping arrangements. And the dream for me was, of course, sleeping next to my baby in bed with my husband next to me and all of us, cuddling and having these like really cute and lovely, nourishing sleeps where, I just breastfeed in the night and he goes back to sleep and it's all beautiful. And we all wake up rested, even if we're in bed for 12 hours, which has definitely been the norm. And that was very quickly, in the journey, not going to happen. For me, and of course, I'm trying to summarize this. There's been so many iterations of our sleeping situations that it boggles my mind. We're trying everything we can. But one of the things that was the hardest for me early on was coming to terms with the fact that I was not getting restful sleep next to my baby. And that was absolutely heartbreaking. To this day, am still grieving that. I can feel the emotion as I'm talking about it because I so badly want to cuddle with my baby all night and sleep. And that is not what worked for me. Um, the rewiring of my brain that happens, and for most of us mothers, to really be hyper vigilant at all times meant I got zero deep sleep sleeping next to my baby. And that created a complete mental breakdown and whirlwind of unhappiness during my days, being completely unrested, frustrated. I was not able to show up present. I was extremely emotional, and really just not a happy person during the day, getting zero deep sleep. being woken every time he made a noise, every time he wiggled or moved, every time he breathed funny. I was really on alert, which is very common and is actually, as I'm learning more now, something that physically changes in our brains as mothers to be on alert for protection reasons. It's actually a very primal, rewiring that happens. And early on, I had to come to terms with the fact that that was just not working. And that really just broke my heart. I want to sleep with my baby. I want to be there for him. I want to cuddle him. I want him to feel that connection and feel safe. All the things that I believe so deeply about co sleeping and how important it is. I had to come to terms with like that wasn't working for our family. And I needed to find another way and a compromise so that I could get sleep, Ben could get sleep, Landon could get sleep, and we could all actually show up as really good parents during the day. So what that's actually looked like for us over the last couple months actually is I'm usually in the guest room overnight and Ben co-sleeps with Landon, which is such a beautiful, I'm still working on changing my mindset around that. It is a really beautiful gift for them to have that time to bond. Landon is not alone in a crib crying it out in his own room, which is something that absolutely is a hard no for me. And he's there with a caregiver that he knows and trusts. And Ben is able to have a lot more of a regulated nervous system because he doesn't have the motherhood hormones pulsing through him when Landon fusses like I do. He's able to sleep through a lot of his wiggles and noises more than I am. So for us, it's really just what worked and what is continuing to work, even though I'm trying to get back into the family room, back into the bedroom with my family, in small bits and pieces here. And really, I'm at the process right now where I'm trying to train my nervous system to be able to rest fully with him making noises, knowing that he's safe, that it's all okay. So this is a crazy process, and I'm leaving out a lot of details because we just don't have time for it today. But this has been a massive journey for me of dealing with a lot of grief in what I really thought would be, and with now sleeping alone, right? Being alone in my own room and not being with my family has been extremely challenging for me mentally, emotionally, spiritually. There's a lot of guilt that shows up, guilt around, influence Ben not getting a good sleep, guilt around me having a better sleep, guilt around not being with my baby when he maybe needs me in the night, all the guilt, right? And these are still things that I'm processing through, things that I'm coming to terms with and trying to surrender. So this has really brought up a lot of the lessons in this that I want to share with all of you is acceptance. There's been a big push for me here with acceptance, acknowledgement, right? When I first realized like this is not working, something needs to change. It was really hard for me, but it was an important journey for me to deepen into really surrendering to what is working, right? Okay, if it actually works better for the whole family that I'm sleeping in the guest room and getting decent sleep, other than the couple times that I get up to breastfeed in the night, and Ben is able to get decent sleep, and Landon gets to cuddle with dad all night, and everybody's happy in the morning, that is ultimately the win, right? So coming into something with an expectation or a dream and having to adjust based off of like the realities of that has been an insane growth edge for me. I'm still working through it, right? Letting go of how I thought something would be that was so important to me and really learning how to adjust and flow. And that's a daily practice right now. Literally every day we're like, okay, what's the sleeping arrangement tonight? We're not set in stone. We're adjusting and flowing as Landon changes, as my hormones start to regulate, here 6 months postpartum, as I'm able to maybe feel a bit more regulated around him with his noises and sleep and maybe sleep through some of it. We're figuring it all out, and it's a continual work in progress to really meet the needs of our child that feels so important to us with attachment and helping him build a healthy nervous system, knowing that he's safe and loved and he's not alone at night. That feels really important to us. But also the reality of like one day maybe that is what's best. Maybe he's okay by himself as long as he's not in distress. So we're still figuring that out, still working through it. But this has probably been one of the most biggest like ongoing challenges ever since Landon has been born, and is still something, emotionally and energetically that is hard for me, and is, gosh, just, one of those things that I am every day being forced to surrender to, and getting the practice in that I know one day will be, really helpful for me. Really, really a beautiful growth edge. So sleep, has been a challenge, and oscillating between feeling guilty and also feeling really grateful that we have a situation that for the most part and most nights works, where we can rest, and I can, have some deep sleep, and Landon can sleep and Ben can sleep. Like it's working. It's working right now. And when it's no longer working, we'll change it up again. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that with the sleep, because there's so much that I could say there, but that has definitely been, man, it's hard. So hard. The second challenge, moving on. Let's go on to number 2. Challenge number 2 was actually, I guess, one of my first challenges was breastfeeding. Oh my goodness. I heard about before motherhood, so many women talked about how, like, how can something so natural be so difficult, be so challenging? And, the challenge for me in breastfeeding was ultimately, I look back and I have to shake my head and laugh at myself, because a lot of the challenges that I experienced could have been avoided by watching a couple YouTube videos. Literally watching a couple videos about proper latching and about proper, positioning. And I didn't. I took for granted that, oh, this is just going to be so easy. It's going to be natural, right? Like breastfeeding is something that is so innately wise in my body, in his body. And we're just going to figure it out together, and it's going to be all good. And that's not what happened. So I know I shared a little bit on one of the podcasts. I can't remember if it was my birth story podcast. Probably, I think it was that one that I shared a little bit, or on one of my Instagram posts, that that's not what happened. So pretty early on, the first couple days of life, Landon was latching wrong. So I didn't know it. I didn't know he was latching wrong. It was breastfeeding was hurting, but I thought it was supposed to hurt, especially in the beginning as I was learning how to, have somebody sucking at my nipples all the time. And I thought it was normal. And a couple days in, I started noticing my nipples were actually becoming cracked. They were actually starting to bleed. They were actually really starting to hurt worse, not get better. And that's when I started speaking up and asking for tips, and finally spoke up to my doula, my midwife, who very quickly said, no, no, there's something going on there. We need to fix that. And went on a corrective journey. But that first week of learning how to breastfeed, and not just the first week, but I got myself in a bad spot. Landon, wasn't latching properly. I was in pain. I was crying every time he needed to feed, because I knew the pain was coming. And it was a very, very emotional and difficult time, combined with, of course, the hormonal emotional roller coaster that comes with the drop of hormones after birth. It was really freaking difficult. Super tough start to that, and the healing journey that my nipples had to go on after we finally corrected, okay, this is the proper latch. Training Landon how to latch properly, training me how to hold him properly, and how to kind of do that whole thing. Once we got it, it was like, oh, this is what I was doing wrong. And that's why I say, it was literally a couple of YouTube videos I watched that really helped me go, oh, this is where I was going wrong. He's latching on my hard palate, not deep in his soft palate in his mouth, which just was rubbing and causing a lot of obviously pain and discomfort. So that was, ouch, that was a challenge. And the lessons that came out of that for me, number one, were really not assuming that something natural is easy, right? Just because it's natural, of course, breastfeeding is natural. It's not going to be easy. It's a learned skill for both myself and Landon. It really called me to lean into a lot of patience and perseverance and trial and error. So the lessons in there for me were endless, right? Of asking for help. learning how to ask for help at a deeper level and accept that help and to try different things. I tried all the tools. I had all the supports, and even one of the things that we had to do, and again, was not something that was in our plan, that we had to kind of think on our feet around, was pumping. So pumping was less painful for me in the, for a week or two. And that allowed me to kind of give my nipples a little bit of a break while Ben could also then bottle feed Landon. So this was something that actually helped with sleep early on as well, because we would do shift work with sleep, and Ben would be able to give Landon a bottle or two while I slept for a few hours. So that was helpful, kind of twofold. But it was really something that we had to adjust with, because it was not something that we wanted to do early on. We didn't want to give him a bottle in the first couple of weeks. I didn't want to pump to mess off my milk supply, but it's something that was needed in that moment. And we really had to think on our feet, ask for help, and learn to kind of adjust and trial and error a bunch of things. And I'm really grateful to say, I got some beautiful advice from other moms in my community and from my midwives, and we were able to, get the breastfeeding back on track within a couple weeks. But it was, oh God, it was painful. It was horrible. It was a horrible start. And I'm really proud and happy to say now I love breastfeeding. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's painless. It's wonderful. I really enjoy that connection time with Landon, and it's been a glorious journey. I'd say it took about a month to really get into a place where I was enjoying it and not, dreading it every time he needed to feed. And it was challenging for me. There was a lot of emotions tied up in that. And I'm grateful to say that we're through it now. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Who knew something so natural could be so challenging, right? And what a great way to learn, right? Oh my goodness. Learning through pain, not fun, not recommended, but sometimes that's what we need to go through, right? And I'm learning too that, when I'm going into these new things that, even though I think are just going to be natural, to maybe not take that for granted. Like, watch a YouTube video, do a little research before. And it's funny, I had people suggest that I do that. And I just thought to myself, nah, that's not important. I've got too many other things on my plate. Like, I'll figure that out after. But boy, can it go south quickly. It took a couple days and the damage was done. So yikes. All right, let's move on to challenge number 3. This one is very applicable to this podcast, and challenges with food. So one of the things that I have noticed, and this is actually, there's kind of 2 of the challenges here that I want to share, but old patterns sneaking back in. So this is number 3, is I've really noticed on and off, especially in those first few months of Landon's life, my old addictive patterns sneaking back in. And that's, look, for me, like eating a little bit more sugar than I want to, and scrolling on Instagram and binging on Netflix, like these coping mechanisms that I'm very aware of, because I'm very aware of my addictive patterns, my coping mechanisms. And for me, it's been fascinating, and I'm coming at this with a lot of self-compassion, to observe the new levels that have shown up for me in motherhood, of being tired, of being bored, of being disconnected from who I am, this massive identity shift, and to have my nervous system constantly activated. My nervous system being pretty dysregulated most days, which is extremely normal and common for mothers to be that hypervigilant. So there's nothing, like, I know I'm not doing anything wrong. This is like a primal hormonal thing that's also showing up for me. So, like, a lot of my old triggers with my addictive patterns with food, with other substances, showing up at a new level. And noticing those pretty early on, like, what is going on here? I thought I would be, completely sugar free and always eating healthy and being so present with my child all the time instead of just watching Netflix. And that has not been the case. And I'm absolutely not guilting myself for that. I am coming at this with an observer view and love and compassion for myself, which have been really called on me to bring about new levels of that, new levels of this love, self-love, self-acceptance. And the lessons here for me are really just noticing the next layer, the new layers of where these addictive patterns are still showing up for me. And perhaps a need at this new level for me to find new practices, new tools, new supports that I need now in this phase of my life that I didn't need before. I had a handle on things before and I still really do. I'm very aware of where I'm at and I'm absolutely okay with just watching and observing and noticing where I'm going to need to bring in new supports for myself when I'm ready. So what another opportunity and lesson for me of surrender and of really just as I said, self-love and acceptance and self-compassion as I'm in and out of some habits that I don't love, that don't fuel me. Right. But in those moments, I really just need, after a sleepless night, I just need to like binge on some Netflix. Big deal. I'm not going to worry about that, but I am going to continue observing it because it's not something that I want to carry with me long term. It's also not something that I know serves me or is going to help me be the best mother that I can be. So, I'm very aware of all of these things, very aware. And I know that I'm going to step into these new tools, new practices as I'm ready and as they become really needed and as I become more resourced and shift out of survival mode, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute with another challenge. So just wanted to really be honest about that I've not been eating perfect. I've definitely been eating more sugar than I normally have. And that's been really interesting to me, really fascinating to really observe how like my whole foundation has been shaken. And I talked so much about this before I became a mother, with my clients and with this podcast, that this like sense of ungroundedness and identity, like lack of identity and connection with self. I also noticed my connection with source and spirit, and my spiritual practices have been kind of pushed to the side. Like everything's become about Landon, and that's okay. And eventually I will find my feet again, and I will find my new sense of identity again, and my new practices that really support. So I'm looking forward to that time. I can feel it already coming now. 6 months in, things are really starting to shift, and I'm starting to build in some more of those things that support me. So yeah, very grateful for that. Number 4, let's move on to lesson and challenge. Number 4 has been feeling good in my body. This is an interesting like mind game for sure. Um, Growing a human and gaining all that weight was something that I was totally okay with. It was really beautiful. There was a purpose. It was housing this human and birthing this human. And in the aftermath of that, 6 months in, the truth is I'm still carrying weight that I thought would be gone by now. I thought I would, be able to be back, with how much calories I'm burning, breastfeeding, how much I'm walking and moving every day. I am exercising. I'm back into running, for the most part, eating really healthy. And why is this weight not falling off? And that has been a bit of an interesting mind game for myself to, on one hand, of course, not fret about that, right? Not erase the um, the proof of this human that I grew and this little bit of extra tummy, that I'm carrying, or these places where I'm noticing it on my body is really beautiful on one hand. And on the other hand, I want to feel good in my body again. I want to feel strong. I want to feel, the way that I did before carrying a child. And it's that conundrum of acceptance and allowing this journey to unfold. 6 months is also not a long time. And then the other part of me that's like, 6 months is a long time. I've been doing all the things. Why am I still carrying this weight? Why is it not just naturally falling off with my healthy lifestyle? And that is so many more levels of acceptance, self-love that I just talked about, with the previous challenge, surrender, patience, like all of these lessons that are coming out of that journey for me, and learning how to really accept my body at a new level, and to love my body where it's at and really meet it where it's at. And also to acknowledge and notice where I know I could be doing better. I know there are things like I talked about earlier. I'm eating more sugar than I want to be eating, right? And I'm could be doing some things that I know And I will when I'm ready to get back on track. I could definitely be exercising more, but it's so hard when you're so tired all the time, every day, right? So there's a lot tied up into that. And I just wanted to speak to that because it is a very real challenge, I think, for every woman postpartum is like trying to get their old body back, but also loving and accepting where their body is at now. And I think whether or not you've had kids, this is something that all women can relate to. And I just really wanted to speak to it here as something that I'm still struggling with. It's still like, oh man, why is the scale not going down? I'm really sort of staying at this level right now, been plateaued for months. Like, why isn't it shifting? I'm breastfeeding. It's supposed to be burning all the calories off, right? What is going on here? So, again, opportunities for me to observe, opportunities for me to deepen into self-love and acceptance for my body and where I'm at, and trust the process. This is a major shift in my life for my old addictive patterns, for my body, for my nervous system, for mind, all of it is it's a big shift and it's going to take time to recalibrate, and I need to be patient in that. So definitely getting some lessons in patience. Definitely. Okay, let's finish it off with challenge number 5. Now, I spoke to this a little bit already, but wow, nobody could have prepared me for this. Lesson or challenge number 5 is really just nervous system activation all the time. So my body has been in survival mode, mostly, I would say, very deeply for the first 3 months, maybe 4 months of Landon's life. But the amount that I know about my nervous system, and the tools that worked for me in the past, it has been so wild to observe that I'm not able to relax. And yes, there have been maybe pockets of time, but it's fascinating the way a mother's brain and body get rewired to be hyper vigilant all the time. There's literally a human that relies on me to be aware of his needs every single second of every day. And that is exhausting. And it's, for me, it's really shown up as being hard to, and nearly impossible to turn off, to relax, to fully rest and digest, right? Which is an ideal state to be in most of the time. And that's been a trip for me. That's been really challenging. And no doubt, I know why many of my addictive patterns have shown back up in different ways, and why, sleep has sometimes been a challenge. Like, I know that this is, my mood swings and hormones and emotions, like coming from this place of not really being able to get a deep breath, not really being able to sigh a relief in my body like I used to. And this is something that I'm being very curious about because I suspect will be one of my biggest lessons, and one of the things that I will be able to bring forward and offer to other mothers as I get back into work is learning how to regulate, learning how to support the nervous system through motherhood. And I do not have this figured out yet at all. At all. This is still very tough for me. Even if I go out of the house, I go for a massage, I go for a walk without Landon or with Landon. Like, I'm just always a little bit on. Not high, not on nervous system high, but always a little bit on. Always just a little bit, activated under the surface at all times. And it's really, really freaking exhausting and challenging and frustrating as well. These old tools weren't enough, right? The old tools that I used to use day to day, like getting out in nature and grounding and having a bath at the end of the day and connecting to my breath, just aren't cutting it. And at least not right now. And I trust and I know that my system will shift as Landon grows, as he becomes more self-sufficient, as I don't have to be as hypervigilant anymore, as he relies on me a little bit less, but that's going to be maybe years. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I'm definitely learning is how our brains as mothers get physically rewired to be on alert at all times because there's a human that needs us for survival. So that makes sense. And at the same time, it's exhausting and it's not needed in our society in this day and age, right? I don't live out in the woods with predators, constantly lurking anymore, right? There's a level of safety here with him. He's extremely safe alone with dad, even alone by himself if he's sleeping. All of these things are realities, but my body doesn't know that. So a lot of lessons showing up here for me, you know, as I mentioned already, this opportunity to explore new tools. I clearly need new tools in this new phase. I'm learning to adapt, learning how to really find space in my days to at least attempt to regulate, learning how to ask for new levels of help. Right. This has been a big one for me, letting Ben step in and help, relinquishing my need for like control, letting grandma help out. These have been, yeah, definitely areas that I'm continuing to work on and I do not have figured out yet, but I do know that getting back into some of my old tools that I have, it's been wild being in such a deep like survival mode and also noticing that I haven't wanted to do the tools or practices that I know support me. Breath work, for example, is a massive support. And I know how massive it is, taking time to meditate or dance or do breath work. And these are things that I'm just not doing. So it's really fascinating observing my resistance show up for these tools that I know are going to support my nervous system and finding excuses to not do them. There are certain practices that are easy for me to do, getting outside, going for a walk, right? Having a bath at the end of the day. These are things that are really easy for me to do, but are just not cutting it. So I'm in this phase now where spring is here and I'm slowly coming out of the depth of newborn survival phase, and finally ready to start bringing back some of these tools. And I'm confident that they are going to be game changers for me, especially the breath work. This is something that I'm so passionate about and had such a beautiful practice with before. And now's the time to deepen back into that when I'm ready, trusting that flow. So summing up here, this big episode, yes, of course, children are miracles and there's so much joy to be experienced. We have loved Landon every second since he arrived and even before, and there's so much fun in this journey. It's also okay to admit that it's really hard. This has been the hardest thing I've ever done, and I know is going to continue showing up for me as growth opportunities. That's what we're calling it. But validating these experiences of toughness, of hardness, I'm hoping really can help us all stop hiding, right? Help us feel more seen and hopefully continue honoring the emotions, so we don't need to cope with food or with whatever other addictive substance you're coping with, right? This really is all about understanding that regulation of nervous system, understanding our patterns, understanding how to honor our emotions when they need to be honored, which I've been definitely doing. I'm sure there's areas where I'm not. Like sometimes you got to suck it up and look after the baby, right? But I've definitely been letting the tears flow and honoring those emotions as they show up, speaking to them here with all of you. So, please remember to keep doing that wherever you are in your journey, whether you're a mother or not. And, my hope is by opening up about some of my personal challenges here that you're able to feel a little bit more seen and validated in your own challenges and know that you don't have to be perfect, and to know that a lot of this, especially if you're a mother, is extremely normal. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. This is such a journey of adapting and learning and adjusting, and it's wild. It's wild. It's wild to hold so much joy and happiness at the same time as holding all the grief and all the guilt and all the exhaustion, and like how to hold both of those while also having a regulated nervous system. Like, I'll let you know once I figure it out. You'll be the first to know once I figure out the secret, and I can't wait for that time. So it will be wonderful to finally sink into that. All right. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you everyone so much for tuning into another episode. This has been awesome to finally come on and record. I'm sure Landon needs me, so I'm going to head out, go check on my little babe, and wish you all a wonderful week. Thank you again for tuning into this episode, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If you're loving what we talked about today, please remember to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with someone you love. It helps me incredibly reach more people and help more women who need this information. And if you're ready to go deeper into discovering your unique root causes and patterns keeping you hooked on sugar year after year, be sure to come and check out the brand new free root cause quiz that will give you actionable items to finally begin healing your relationship with sugar from the inside out. You can find the link to download this quiz and other amazing resources in the show notes below. I also wanted to just take a quick minute to share a disclaimer. The information provided in this podcast is for general purposes only and is not at all intended to be professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And as much as I do my best to bring you up to date and accurate information, please remember that I'm also sharing my opinions, stories, and ideas that are ultimately not supported by mainstream science. My personal advice should not be taken as professional advice, and you are always encouraged and advised to consult with your own healthcare practitioner before making any changes to your health and wellness routine. This podcast is intended to inspire and offer you alternative views to healing your relationship with food, mind, and body. It is up to each listener to take responsibility for their own health and wellness decisions. I hold no liability or responsibility for your results or lack thereof. Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast, and we can't wait to see you in the next episode. Let's go.